And welcome back to Forward Thinking. In this episode, we have Katrina Adams joining us. Katrina is the former chairperson and president and CEO of the USTA and current chairperson of the Fed Cup and Gender Equality and Tennis Committees, as well as the VP of the ITF. Thanks for joining us, Katrina.
Thanks for having me.
So we wanted to start off going into your background as well as your own personal experience with coronavirus and how you overcame it.
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be able to share any sport story that I can help others. But, a little background, first of all, as a, former professional tennis player, played on the WTA Tour for 12 years. Started playing when I was 6 in inner city Chicago. Was lucky enough to have a couple pros that thought I had potential and was able to kind of hone my skills and keep elevating me to the next level, to the next teaching pro that could give me what I needed to succeed. Earned a college scholarship, played on the professional tennis tour, and got into the commentating and business side after that. As far as the virus is concerned, I contracted it in early March. My business has been on the road. In my travels, I picked it up. And fortunately for me, I had very minor symptoms. I only had body aches for a couple nights. Had a fever one night that broke while I was sleeping and was able to get a test. It was positive and, was self-quarantining. So I feel great now. I had a week of feeling exhausted during that time. I was just tired every day. I was sleeping 10 to 12 hours, which I thought I was just catching up on lost years of sleep. Mm-hmm. But turned out it was some side effects, and now I'm negative, and I've been donating my plasma. I have another blood bank appointment that's coming Monday.
Well, yeah, we're glad to hear you're doing better. Coronavirus has had an enormous impact on the world of sports, especially. We've talked about it with a few of our guests now, but looking forward, given your experience in running the USTA as well as just your personal experience within sport and the business of sport, how do you think this is going to change things going forward?
Well, it's going to be challenging, as we've seen now with everything coming to a halt. I remember the day I was watching or attempting to watch a basketball game, and, they just cut everything right then and there. It was the right move, by the Commissioner Adam Silver and the league to get the players off the court, to, cancel all of the games for that night. And we see where we are. People thought it was ridiculous at that time, but you see where we are today. So every league, every sport is really peeling back the layers to try to figure out how to come back online safely. Tennis in particular is a global sport, as is the NBA and others, but tennis for sure. And, these players are coming from all over the world where they're on lockdown. The nation's borders are closed, or you're not able to fly in and out, as is golf, international. And golf will have been able to come up with a plan to start in mid-June. Professional tennis is definitely postponed through mid-July. And we're hoping by the end of August, it's time to fire up at the US Open here in New York, that we will be ready to go and cleared to at least have gatherings. But we have a bunch of different scenarios in place. And every day is a different day, and every week is a different week leading up to it. But I do see sports coming back, maybe with no fans. Baseball came online last night in Korea, so we'll see where it goes.
I've got a question. Why tennis? You said you're from Chicago, inner city Chicago. How do you end up playing tennis?
I stumbled on the sport. It was a summer program that the Martin Luther King Boys Club was hosting, and it was sponsored by a police program at that time. My brothers were in the program. It was a walking distance from our home. Right. We were members of that club. So I was actually too young to be in the program. I was just kind of outside the fence for a couple of weeks. Okay. And, these kids had no talent whatsoever. And I was a visual learner, and I was itching to get on the court. But once the first time I hit the ball and felt it on my racket and the strings and hit it over the net into the court, I was hooked. Right. And it was just something that, it's interesting because when I started the sport, I started in my community. The next summer I played at a different location, but everybody was Black. So wow. I didn't know anything about the sport not being all that inclusive back in the 70s. Right. And even the first tournament I played was called the ATA Nationals, which was down in New Orleans, and which was everyone was black. So
Right.
as I got better and started playing in local tournaments, I realized that really wasn't the case.
Right.
But I loved it from the start.
Right. That's great. I've always had a different level of respect for individual athletes. I could never play an individual sport. I know that, from inside my own being, because I just feel like, particularly watching tennis, I feel like tennis players are always exposed. So what are some of the things that individual sports build in athletes versus some of the things that, we rely on in team sports?
Yeah, I mean, what tennis offers and provides, the life skills that we learn are those skills that we obviously take throughout our lives. But it's building your self-confidence, your self-esteem. It's learning how to manage your own time. It's learning how to be dedicated and disciplined, self-motivated, because you have to be out. You have to want to go to practice. You're out there. You're doing the drills on your own. Yeah, you have a coach, but really learning the skills and understanding the psychology of the sport, because it's just not, just hitting the ball and running. It's the tactics that are involved and figuring out a puzzle. And that's, for someone like me, it's interesting. I look at many of our champions and past champions of the sport. A lot of them are Leos. I'm a Leo. But, our self-esteem is already out here when it comes to how we're wired. But to be able to go out and compete one-on-one, our sport has been named like a gladiator sport.
Right.
But I love that, just trying to figure out what to do and how to do it against one-on-one. Although, I was a great doubles player. I loved having someone on my side of the net, that I'm high-fiving, that I'm collaborating with and working well with. And I grew up playing, basketball and softball and all the other team sports, but tennis was something that I just excelled in, and it's taken me far.
Right. That's great. I've always had an affinity for individual athletes, because I think, like, when you lose in basketball, we kind of disperse the blame. Like, well, he didn't do his job for a minute. I didn't do my job for 3 minutes. The coach kind of didn't have.
I can only blame myself.
Right. And I've always felt like that's a tough situation to be in.
I can only blame myself. And, and I'm competitive at heart. So I think also too, having that individual drive, although I'm competing against someone else, I'm really challenging myself. How I go on the court to get better and to do things differently and to be able to raise my level. And that competitive nature, I've taken into golf. I mean, I love trying to get better with every shot, every round.
Once you wrapped up your career, first started with CBS Sports Network on the commentating side, but eventually transitioned into becoming the president, chairman, and CEO of the USTA, where you were the first former player, first African-American, and the youngest person to ever serve as president, if I got that all correctly.
Yeah, that is correct.
So, you've been trailblazing, and believe you were also involved with diversity and inclusion while you were at the USTA. When it comes to a sport that, at least at the professional level, tends to maybe not have the most diverse base, what were some of the key components around those initiatives in increasing the diversity in the sport?
Yeah, I mean, the USTA has spent, a couple decades really elevating their diversity and inclusion and bringing more people into the game. I think that our sport has always been diverse, but I think the opportunities of competing on the highest level have been minimal. But it's not because they weren't welcome, particularly in the open era, but more so because of what it takes to actually be able to compete at the highest level, the travel that's involved, the tournaments that you have to play, and the expense that comes with it. So it kind of excluded the have-nots, if you will. And if you had an opportunity to have a sponsor, or you were just a phenom like the Williams sisters, then you were able to break in. I wasn't one of those haves. I was a have-not, but I had people that were supporting me to help me get to the level that I got to. But I would say, when Venus and Serena in particular came on in the mid 90s and late 90s, it really spawned a big desire for other young people to say, wow, if they can do it, I can do it too. And the parents that said, wow, maybe this sport is for us. And you can see, yes, the numbers aren't great, but we have a lot of, on the women's side in particular, a lot of professional Black players that are out there, from Serena, Venus, Sloane, Madison, Madison Keys, Taylor Townsend, Coco Gauff, and many others, Asia Muhammad. And, they are an inspiration to the next generation. Francis Tiafoe is a young man that's out there right now, who's top, 60 in the world, I think last year at one point. And it's just a little tougher from the male perspective because, they're constantly seeing the LeBron James and the Russell Wilsons, on television and every commercial, everything, and they want to be like them. The Last Dance was on. I grew up in the MJ era, so everybody wanted to be like Mike. But so that's where our Black boys have gone. There are a lot of them in our sport on the junior level that are doing really well. They're playing collegiate tennis, and it's just a matter of that hunger to really come out and compete. But also, you have to have the means to be able to travel the world and be successful.
So what's the age at which, if there is an age limit, that you can professionalize within tennis?
Physically, the girls mature a lot quicker than the boys. And so in the 80s and 90s, you saw where the players were turning pro at the age of 14 and 15. You had Venus and Martina Hingis and Anna Kournikova and Lucic. They were all 14. They came out at the same time. Phenomenons, Jennifer Capriati. And over time, what the WTA did in their sports science department is really started to do a little more research for the physical and the mental part of these players. They had data over the years to see how these players responded. And so they started to kind of phase them in more. You could only play so many tournaments at 14, 15, 16. And then at 17, you could play a full schedule. You have to think about it. It's not just the physical part of playing the matches. It's really traveling all over the world in a business. You become your own CEO of yourself and how you're performing, you're training, dealing with the media, the travels. Think about your 14 or 15-year-old being thrust into that environment and the psychological effects it can have on them long term, or maybe burn them out at an earlier age. So when you see someone like a Coco Gauff, who has just emerged the last year at 15, the phenom that she is, she's been limited to the amount of tournaments that she could play. And she's done really well in them, and her ranking has gotten up top 60 in the world, maybe top 50 at the end, I'm not sure. But she is limited. But on her birthday, I think she just turned 16, she now has a chance to play a couple more tournaments this year, and she really won't be able to play a full schedule until 17. The men on the other side, physically, they just can't really come out and ball with the players that are out there. And so, they're really 18, 19 before they really have an opportunity to go full speed ahead and maintain that.
Right. Yeah. Coco Gauff, her confidence is through the roof, just in terms of, when she's on that stage. Again, that's probably one of the more impressive things about tennis. And so what about selling the game? Is the media responsible when you talk about, young Black men and who are great athletes? Is the media bear some responsibility in exposure and making sure that there's sort of this equal exposure for athletes to be able to pick?
I think it is. I think the media is definitely could step up a little bit more in many ways. But, when I mentioned how, we see more of the LeBrons and the Russells and everyone else, those are also sponsors, right? So those are sponsored commercials that are out there for whatever product that they're endorsing. And, a lot of our young kids, they're obviously not getting those endorsements to be able to buy those television spots, because you've got to have that name to sell it, right?
Right.
So we have to find other ways, whether it's via social media or whether it's just interested parties that want to promote these young men and women more, to give them that exposure that they need. But at the end of the day, we are an individual sport, and it's a matter of really making sure that we perform. If we don't win, we don't excel, we don't move up in our ranking, we don't get to the next tournament, yada, yada, yada. So it's a process in our sport. We're not being drafted. It's not like you get on a team, kind of hide behind everybody while you're developing your talent and then excel. Or, you made the greatest assist on that, the biggest shot of the game, passing it to your teammate. I got to go out there and perform as an individual, and that makes it challenging.
It sounds like when you're laying out this process and this transition that a young tennis player will go through as they're professionalizing, that the college component of it that you see in traditional sports may not be a priority or even a piece of that transition?
No, it's definitely part of our pathway. It's something that we definitely promote within the USTA. Martin Blackman, who's our general manager of player development, has implemented a pathway through college when he first came on board, I don't know, 10 years ago, probably now. But I went to college. I played in college. I played at Northwestern University, earned a college scholarship, but I left after 2 years because my talent took me to the level where I could go out and play professionally. But I wouldn't trade that in for the world. I mean, the experience that I got, not only through tennis at school, but just as an individual, being able to grow and mature, I think helped me be successful, not only for the next 12 years on tour, but obviously it prepared me to what I've done once I've gotten off the tour. So I think collegiate tennis has definitely gotten tougher. It's gotten better because a lot of these players that were thinking about going pro at earlier ages are realizing that, hey, I need to keep developing, keep getting stronger, get an education, and then move forward. You have very few Coco Gauffs,
Right.
or Katie McNally, who is her doubles partner, who is also, she tweeted the other day, hey, just took my last high school exam. So, just graduated from high school, and these girls are traveling the world at a full base. So it's been very challenging for them.
So, sort of keeping with that theme, I just want to know what could you tell a young kid? Maybe this is like a 2 or 3 part question, but what is the impact that choosing sport has had, on your life, sort of in the overarching theme? I think a lot of times young kids make the decision like I'm not gonna go into sports because they think that the only benefit of sport is just what you get out of it, as opposed to some of the experiences you can have, the avenues and doors that can be opened, and the directions it could potentially send your life. And so, what is the overarching impact of sports in your life, and then how would you sort of explain that to a young kid who's on the fence of whether or not they want to get into, not necessarily a specific sport like tennis or anything, but just
Right.
the general idea of getting into sport?
Yeah, I think sport is crucial for anybody. And, I think when you're a kid, you should be playing multiple sports. I think you should be trying your skills at whether it's soccer, tennis,
Right.
football, basketball, whatever it is. I think kids need to understand that, first of all, it's going to prolong their life to start to teach them early healthy habits,
Right.
being fit, but also they get to learn to work with other people, with other kids. You have to collaborate. You have to partner. You have to work together in order to succeed, to accomplish that goal, whether it's scoring, whether it's stopping someone from scoring, whether it's hitting a great serve in tennis, or making that buzzer beater shot. Whatever it is, it's working together. And these are all life skills that carry on throughout your entire life. When you're filling out your high school applications, if you're not going to a public school or you're going to a college and you're filling out your application, you don't have to be a collegiate level athlete, but showing that you played sport for 5, 6, 7, 8 years,
Right.
so that you were committed, that you have some certain level of discipline and level of dedication that they want to see in that student that's coming to their institution. And then beyond that, a lot of these businesses want to know if you have played a sport. They'd much rather hire an athlete than, it doesn't have to be a professional athlete,
Right.
but an athlete than a non-athlete, because they know that you are a team player.
That's an important point.
Understand what it takes to work together to be successful, and that you have a certain drive about yourself, that you're ambitious. You love winning, but you understand that losing makes you work harder to thrive and to work towards that higher goal. And that's what these businesses and companies want. They want that person. So I think for any kid that's out there, I don't have anything against esports.
Right.
But, because it's making them competitive. They obviously have a certain vision that I don't have. I love playing video games back in the day.
Right.
But just being out and being active and being physical is a completely different level of commitment just sitting on the couch or wherever you are playing these video games.
Yeah, I feel like in my personal experience, like going through law school, especially the bar exam, I remember how much people struggled in preparation for the bar. Whereas for me, it was like, all right, here's your daily practice routine that you have to go do. You have to hold yourself individually accountable. And then I just remember going into like the final bar prep on campus component right before the exam. And there were people like legit just breaking down. Like they had totally had it. The 2 months had gotten to them, whereas I was just like, all right, we've been prepping for the game. Next week's the game. All right, let's go ahead. Let's get it done.
Preparation, that level of preparation really is the pressure that we are learning to deal with, and the pressure of competing, the pressure of what's the pressure if you actually win? What are the expectations of you at that point? And then what are the pressures of you if you've lost? Because, okay, that means I have to work harder. I didn't prepare as best this week as I could have. I got to prepare better for next week. The same thing in going in and taking your exams, no matter what level of school you are. It's teaching you that discipline and to have a schedule, if you will.